My movie star wife died of a sudden heart attack while in a hotel room with her toy boy. When I rushed over after getting the call from the police, the toy boy was still on his knees, calling my wife's name over and over, his sobs gut-wrenching. I looked up, only to find myself staring right into the soul of Victoria Ashworth. She was furious, threatening me not to hurt her precious lover. I sneered and said, word by word, let's just see how much your precious lover really cares about you. 1. The police officer and the medical examiner, seeing me standing there in silence, spoke with a hint of awkwardness, Mr. Blackwood. The sound of my name cut through Leo Finch's wails. He finally lifted his head from beside Victoria's body. Victoria's obsession with this Leo Finch was absolute. She knew she had a bad heart, yet she'd taken stimulants for their tryst. And as for Victoria's true love, I glanced at the ethereal figure floating above us and let out a snort of contempt. Her true love was more fake than her performances on reality TV. The moment Leo saw me, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. Then he scrambled to his feet, face flushed with anger, and lunged at me. Victoria's soul, seeing this, instinctively tried to block him, to get between us just as she would have in life. But she was nothing more than an apparition now. She could only watch as Leo passed straight through her and came for me. "Leo, don't," she cried out anxiously, before glaring at me with venom. "Sincere, if you dare lay a finger on him, I'll never be done with you." I'd heard threats like that far too many times. Unfortunately for her, I was the only one who could hear them. Leo furiously tried to grab my collar, his expression twisted and hideous. I quickly sidestepped him. Luckily, the police managed to restrain him, otherwise the scene would have gotten much uglier. "Mr. Finch, please, calm down. Miss Ashworth's affairs should be handled by her husband, Sincere Blackwood." The officer had clearly pieced together their relationship and deliberately emphasized the word husband. Leo froze for a second, his face contorting even more. He looked just like one of those disgraced celebrities whose scandals have been exposed, utterly pathetic. "I'm calling the cops. He's the one who killed Victoria. This was no accident," Leo shrieked hysterically. The officer sighed in exasperation. Seeing how agitated he was, I took a few more steps back. It would be a real problem if some model who slept his way to the top actually managed to hurt me. Victoria now stood beside Leo, her gaze fixed on me, cold and menacing. Though I couldn't make out her expression clearly, I knew she suspected me too. Just as the officer was about to speak, I cut in. "Without proof, that's slander. I can sue you." Leo gritted his teeth, seething with impotent rage. "I saw no reason to prolong this. You should hurry back and pack up all the things Victoria gave you," I advised him. I paused for a moment. 2. Everything she owned is our shared marital asset. By law, only Henry and I can legally inherit her estate. "Mr. Finch, do you think I won't demand you pay back every dollar she spent on you?" Leo, who had been sobbing, instantly froze, his expression stiffening. Seeing that he had finally quieted down, the officer signaled for his colleague to escort him from the scene. As Leo was led away, Victoria tried to follow, but some mysterious force held her back at the doorway, leaving her unable to move. I watched her pathetic struggle with cold eyes. "Mr. Blackwood, we'll leave you to handle Miss Ashworth's subsequent arrangements," the officer said to me. The police had clearly done their homework before contacting me. Since Victoria's death was confirmed to be an accident caused by illicit drugs, they only asked a few routine questions on the way over and didn't press the matter further. I couldn't bring myself to look at Victoria's body, especially not her face in death. The image of her ashen complexion would surely give me nightmares. After arranging for my secretary and lawyer to handle the aftermath, I prepared to head home. Although the nanny had already gone to pick up Henry, I was still worried. Henry never had a mother's affection, so he's especially attached to me. I was worried he'd throw a tantrum if he didn't see me. Once I had given the necessary instructions and confirmed my secretary was on his way, I rushed to the airport to catch the next flight. By now, I was certain of one thing. Victoria's soul was bound to me by some force. Gazing at her spirit drifting near the cabin ceiling, I narrowed my eyes. Things were starting to get interesting. I had just landed when I received a video from the nanny. In the video, Henry was wearing his adorable little bear pajamas, his big eyes blinking, but he refused to sleep, insisting that he wanted his daddy. Only when the nanny told him daddy was watching him on the phone did he manage a small smile and sit up properly. "Daddy, Henry really wants to sleep with you. When are you coming home? My son Henry is 5 and will be starting elementary school in a few months." He still had a lilt in his voice that could melt my heart. I immediately quickened my pace towards home. My secretary had already arranged for a car, and I was home in less than half an hour. Pushing the door open, I saw the nanny reading a picture book with Henry. Hearing the door, Henry immediately ran over and threw himself into my arms. I held him tight, comforting him softly, then took him to his room to get ready for bed and told him a few funny stories. It took a great deal of effort to finally lull him to sleep. While I was taking care of Henry, I noticed Victoria sitting quietly on the bay window, just watching. 3. Henry was the product of an unplanned pregnancy. In life, she had little affection for me, and by extension, she was cold to Henry too, almost never spending any time with him. It was no wonder that in all the time I was comforting him, Henry didn't once ask for his mother. I heard her muttering to herself. She was asking why Henry didn't miss his mother. The question made me want to laugh. Looking at Henry's peaceful, sleeping face, I placed a kiss on his forehead and returned to my bedroom. I wasn't in the mood to beat around the bush. I sat down on the edge of the bed and got straight to the point. In the 5 years since Henry was born, how many times did you genuinely spend time with him, taking him to an amusement park or tucking him in at night? Have you done a single one of those things? And now you expect him to remember you as his mother? He's closer to his preschool teachers than he is to you. I looked her directly in the eyes. 10 years of marriage, 7 years of betrayal. The translucent soul suddenly met my gaze. The room fell into a dead silence. Her face was a mask of shock, all her former movie queen elegance gone. "You can really see me." I didn't say anything, just stared at her like she was an idiot. Victoria let out a long sigh and floated over to her vanity. She froze when she realized she had no reflection in the mirror. I snorted, crossing my arms. "Miss Ashworth, are you planning on haunting me forever?" When I discovered her affair with Leo Finch, I had asked for a divorce. But she vehemently refused, saying she couldn't live without me, that Henry needed a complete family, and then used every trick in the book to stop me. I even filed a lawsuit in a fit of rage, but I could never get any concrete evidence of her and Leo. After all, he was the new talent she was promoting, so their frequent appearances together were easily explained away. After several failed attempts, I had to let it go for a while. But then I had another thought. Having a personal ATM who only wired money wasn't so bad. She didn't cause trouble at home and provided a source of income. So I began to plan Henry's financial future. At the same time, I focused on expanding my own business empire. I had to be prepared for the day she might suddenly turn on me and demand a divorce. But I never expected that before she could ask for a divorce, I would receive news of her death. Victoria was an orphan. This meant her entire estate could only be inherited by Henry and me, her legal husband and biological son. That was the only thing she ever did right. We didn't speak again that night. I fell asleep quickly. The next morning, my secretary sent over Victoria's cremation certificate, along with a video of her being sent into the furnace. Victoria didn't know what I was looking at. She drifted closer, just in time to see the image of herself being pushed into the cremator. "You're so calm. Don't you feel even a little bit sad?" 4. Her voice was tinged with exhaustion. Seeing me leisurely sipping my coffee, her face darkened horribly. I ignored her question, finished the last of my coffee, and went to Henry's room to wake him up. He had preschool to get to. When I continued to ignore her, Victoria began to pace around me like a caged animal, her voice growing sharper. Sincere Henry, just waking from his sleep, was completely oblivious to her angry shouts, giggling in my arms. "Daddy, I'm going to bring lots of snacks to share with my friends today." Henry was still bouncing with excitement while we were getting him washed up. I smiled indulgently, helping him find the snacks he wanted to take to school and packing them in his backpack. After dropping Henry off and confirming with my lawyer, I went straight to Victoria's company. Victoria stood in a corner like a ghost, arms crossed, silent. Perhaps she was hoping to see Leo. She was destined for disappointment. When we arrived at the office, Leo was nowhere in sight. Victoria's secretary, Mr. Anderson, was already briefed on the situation and had received the notice from my lawyer. He immediately scheduled a meeting for me at 2 in the afternoon. Mr. Anderson led me into Victoria's private lounge. "Please rest here for a moment, Mr. Blackwood. I'll go prepare the relevant documents." He then hesitated for a moment, gesturing toward the bedroom inside. "If you're tired, you can take a short nap in there." The lounge had a large bed, complete with a walk-in closet and a bathroom. My brow furrowed instinctively. The thought of what Victoria and Leo might have done in this space made my stomach turn. In fact, the entire lounge was probably contaminated with their presence. The thought made me even more nauseous. "This place is disgusting," I said, taking a step back and covering my nose and mouth, avoiding Victoria's gaze. "I'll just go to the conference room with Mr. Anderson." Victoria glared at me with pure hatred. I ignored her fury and motioned for Mr. Anderson to lead the way. He quickly obliged. After reviewing the documents and having a remote call with my legal team, it was lunchtime. Victoria had figured out my intentions. As I followed Mr. Anderson to get the meeting materials, Victoria trailed me like a stalker, cursing me under her breath. Come to think of it, in the 10 years we'd known each other, this was the first time I had ever seen the famous movie queen so completely unhinged. 5. "Sincere, how dare you touch my company, you despicable bastard? This is all mine. What right do you have to interfere?" Victoria came from a humble background and built her empire from scratch. She was known in the industry as a self-made success story. We got married right after graduation. Due to the special nature of her career as a celebrity, we kept our marriage a secret. But in our 7th year of marriage, she cheated. Seeing Mr. Anderson go off to sort the documents for me, I spoke coldly. "Now all of it belongs to me." I couldn't be bothered to waste any more words on her. Victoria stood there as if struck by lightning, her eyes bloodshot. "Sincere, you'll die a miserable death after a short break for lunch." It was soon time for the afternoon meeting. Just as I reached the conference room door, I could hear voices from inside. It was Leo speaking. I leaned against the door frame and glanced at Victoria. Seeing the flicker of hope in her eyes, I couldn't help but find it ridiculous. "That stupid woman, to all the shareholders." Leo's words drifted out intermittently. Victoria wanted to rush in, her eyes trying to intimidate me. But I stood firm, blocking the doorway. If I didn't go in, there was nothing she could do but listen from the outside with me. "Director Ashworth has passed away." Leo's voice was faint. Worried he might ruin my plans, I stopped toying with Victoria and pushed the door open. "Mr. Finch, what a coincidence." Leo, dressed in trendy designer clothes, visibly flinched at the sound of my voice. "Good afternoon, everyone," I said, ignoring him and greeting the shareholders present. Seeing Leo still standing in front of my seat, I put down my briefcase and gave him a meaningful look. "Is there something else, Mr. Finch? People like Leo are so transparent they can't hide anything." His eyes gave everything away. It was the same smug, defiant look he gave me 5 years ago, after the first time he slept with Victoria. It was the same now. I could see right through his plan to rally the shareholders and use Victoria's company to further his own interests. But Victoria was blind. She was oblivious to the calculation in his eyes, mistaking the furtive glance he shot at Diana Sterling for shyness. That single glance was enough to make Victoria's heart ache for him like a teenage girl with her first crush. She floated to my side, trying to threaten me with her gaze. "Sincere, if you dare touch him, I'll haunt you even as a ghost tisk." "A ghost?" I ignored her, my eyes coolly scanning Miss Sterling's face, which, despite its exquisite makeup, couldn't hide the lines of a seasoned player. Leo's taste was truly appalling. 6. But I also understood Leo's predicament. Who among the shareholders present didn't know about the affair between him and Victoria? Right now, Leo was a ticking time bomb. Anyone with a shred of sense would keep their distance. In that light, Miss Sterling, though over 50, was elegant and financially powerful. I gently pushed Leo aside and pulled my chair into position before sitting down. I've gathered everyone today mainly to discuss the future direction of the company. I turned and gestured for Mr. Anderson to brief the shareholders on Victoria's situation. Mr. Anderson looked a bit troubled, but he braced himself and recounted the details of Victoria's death. When he mentioned the sudden heart attack, all the shareholders looked at Leo with suspicion. It was common knowledge that my marriage to Victoria was in name only, and Leo was the young man Victoria had been doting on for the past few years. No one would believe he had nothing to do with this accident, but it was just the two of them in the hotel room. Leo insisted it was an accident, and the police couldn't prove otherwise. Even Miss Sterling's gaze towards Leo had lost its usual warmth. Leo kept his head down, his red-rimmed eyes filled with suppressed emotion. I tapped my fingers on the table and dropped the bombshell. I'm not very familiar with the operations of Victoria's company. After careful consideration, I've decided to sell the entire company. Out of respect for all of your contributions, the current shareholders will have the first right of refusal. I took a stack of my secretary's business cards from my briefcase, handed them to Leo, and said with a slight smirk, "Would you mind passing these out, Assistant Finch?" Initially, in my presence, Leo had been reserved, wary of Victoria's favoritism towards me. But after 2 months of realizing we were truly finished, he became brazen, constantly showing off the limited edition sneakers Victoria bought him. Being ordered around by me now, Leo was momentarily stunned, his fists clenching as his face flushed red. Victoria was fuming but powerless against me. However, Miss Sterling spoke up for Leo. She waved her hand elegantly, her voice gentle. "Mr. Blackwood, please do me a favor. Don't make things difficult for Assistant Finch." She then had her own secretary take the cards to distribute. I raised an eyebrow, unconcerned. Once the cards were handed out, I added, "I'll give everyone 3 days to consider. After that, I'll have someone take over the company." With that, I got up to leave. At the door, I turned back to look at Leo. 7. "Mr. Finch, don't forget our little agreement at the police station. I'll be coming to collect, so you'd better get it ready." I left without another word. That invisible force tugged at Victoria, forcing her to follow me step by step away from the company she built. In the car, Victoria sat beside me. Seeing my determination to sell the company and make trouble for Leo, she finally relented. Her tone softened. "Shay, I know I've wronged you, but I was always good to you. Please, I'm begging you, transfer the company to Sophia Collins and leave Leo alone." Sophia Collins was Victoria's earliest business partner. She was also a witness at our wedding. However, only her secretary had attended the meeting today. I looked down at the video the preschool teacher had just sent me on my phone. In the video, Henry was taking snacks out of his backpack and handing them out to his classmates one by one. The children gathered around him in a happy circle. They sang and danced, clapping their hands. Henry was in the middle, smiling so hard his eyes crinkled. He was so happy. Seeing that I hadn't responded, Victoria leaned over and saw Henry's joyful face. The words she was about to say caught in her throat. She just stared and stared at the radiant smile on Henry's face on my phone. The car stopped in front of the villa. As soon as I got out, my secretary hurried over. He had been running around non-stop since accompanying me to the hotel, and his eyes were filled with exhaustion. Thinking about the business cards I had had him hand out, I suddenly felt a pang of guilt. Double year-end bonus this year. I patted his shoulder and walked inside. At my words, the secretary instantly perked up. He quickly followed me in, holding out the death certificate. "These have been given to the lawyers. They are processing the ownership transfer to you and the young master." I took the documents, glanced at them, and then deliberately tossed them in Victoria's direction. "You've worked hard these past few days," I said, filling him in on today's events. Just as I finished speaking, his phone rang. After getting my permission, he put it on speaker. An elegant female voice came through the line. "Please inform Mr. Blackwood that I want the company." It was Miss Sterling's mature, sophisticated voice. I took a sip of water. At this hour, with that tone. Tisk. Leo certainly works fast. I didn't agree immediately, instead telling the driver to get ready to pick up Henry. A crowd of parents had already gathered at the preschool gate, a line of luxury cars parked along the curb. 8. Henry attended an upscale private preschool, where the parent circle was very civilized, so you rarely encountered unpleasant people. I gave a slight nod to the other parents. One of them, the father of Henry's classmate Lily, walked over. "My daughter ate some of the snacks Henry shared today and absolutely loved them. Would you mind telling me where you bought them?" Lily's father asked with a smile. I immediately forwarded him the purchase link. He then dialed his wife's number. I quietly stepped aside, watching the children playing with their teacher inside the classroom. Henry spotted me and waved happily, a sweet smile lighting up his face. He has always been such a well-behaved child. The teacher, noticing Henry's distraction, gave me a knowing smile and led him back to the group activity. Victoria suddenly appeared beside me. She scanned the crowd of parents and asked hesitantly, "Did you always pick him up by yourself before?" I shot her an irritated glance. "The child's mother isn't around anymore, is she?" The word stuck in Victoria's throat. She was already simmering with anger from the afternoon's events, and now her face turned deathly pale, as if all the blood had been drained from it. Seeing her like this gave me a dark sense of satisfaction. After all those years of love and marriage, I knew exactly which words would cut her the deepest. I used to hold my tongue to keep her as my personal ATM, but now it didn't matter anymore. When the final bell rang, Henry came running over to hug me before saying goodbye to his teacher. Once in the car, Henry chattered excitedly, waving his little hands as he shared stories from his day. Suddenly, his eyes widened. "Daddy, my friend Mia said every kid has a mommy and a daddy. Why do I only have a daddy?" Henry's tone was filled with pure childish curiosity. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. From the day Henry was born, I'd had a plan. Victoria would occasionally try to visit him, but I always found an excuse. Even on the rare occasions she did see him, it was only when he was fast asleep. As Henry got older, she was too busy with Leo, and her visits became even less frequent. As a result, Henry had no real memory of his mother. Victoria watched me quietly from the side, as if waiting to hear my answer. I chose to ignore her. After a moment's thought, I decided to tell Henry the truth. Henry was more mature and sensible than other kids his age, and I wanted us to have a relationship built on friendship as much as fatherhood. 9. I calmly told Henry the story of the last decade, of all the love and resentment between Victoria and me. When I spoke of the moment I discovered her betrayal, my voice still choked up, even after all this time. My vision blurred. I sensed Victoria wanting to move closer, to comfort me. How ridiculous. I lifted Henry out of his car seat and held him tightly in my arms. "With you, Henry, Daddy isn't afraid of anything." After hearing the whole story, Henry couldn't stop crying. By the time the car pulled up to our house, he had slowly calmed down, his big, watery eyes blinking hard to hold back fresh tears. "Daddy, we don't need anyone else. Henry will always be with you." Looking at his adorable, heart-wrenching face, I couldn't help but smile, pulling him into an even tighter hug. "Okay, from now on, Henry will protect Daddy." After watching Henry go inside with Mr. Lee, I sat alone in the car for a while, staring at the empty passenger seat. Victoria was silent the entire time I told my story. Perhaps she had never considered the profound pain her actions had caused others, and now she was speechless. Victoria suddenly started to speak, her voice grating on my nerves. I just wanted to be alone, and had no desire to hear any of her explanations. I pushed the door open and got out, my dress shoes making a crisp sound on the pavement. Victoria, as if pulled by an invisible string, could only follow silently behind me. Time flew by, and soon it was the third day. After dropping Henry at preschool, I went back to Victoria's company. Mr. Anderson led me directly to the conference room. On the way, I had already gotten an update from my secretary. Although Victoria's company was doing well, of all the offers I received over the past few days, Ms. Sterling's was the most generous. She had even proactively increased her bid. Victoria, though aware of my plan, wasn't as agitated as before. Just before we entered the conference room, she pleaded softly with me not to be too hard on Leo. It seemed she really did care for him. Remembering the message my secretary had just sent, I ignored her plea and pushed open the conference room doors with a flicker of interest. I wondered if she could still plead for Leo after seeing what was inside. The door opened slowly, revealing Leo Finch sitting right next to Diana Sterling. 10. Gone was his usual pretty boy image and the gentle facade he put on for Victoria. Today his white shirt was unbuttoned to the third button, offering a tantalizing glimpse of his toned chest. His black trousers perfectly accentuated the long lines of his legs, and he exuded a magnetic charm. Miss Sterling's fingertips were tracing a line across his shoulder. Just as I thought. My suspicions were confirmed. They had gotten together right after that last meeting. I remembered how Miss Sterling had been breathing heavily during her first call to me. She must have just been with Leo. As I walked into the conference room in my casual suit, Leo tilted his chin up arrogantly, his eyes full of smug triumph. I glanced at Victoria, who was standing beside Leo, and sighed internally. I had witnessed so many of her breakdowns recently that I had become accustomed to them. After taking my seat and looking around at the shareholders, I got straight to the point. I have received numerous inquiries recently. After careful consideration, I have decided to transfer my shares to Miss Sterling. I then took the prepared legal documents from my secretary and handed them to her. I look forward to a pleasant partnership. Miss Sterling withdrew her hand from Leo's shoulder, carefully reviewed the contract, and then signed her name with a flourish. A pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Blackwood. Victoria, completely drained, leaned against the corner wall, her face as white as a sheet. Amid the noise of the room, I could faintly hear her whisper, "What did I do wrong to fall for a man like this?" But that was no longer my concern. Seeing his scheme succeed, Leo brazenly wrapped an arm around Miss Sterling and pulled her in for a kiss. Completely smitten, Miss Sterling looked at me triumphantly. "Mr. Blackwood, why not be magnanimous and let Leo off the hook?" The shareholders who hadn't secured the shares all looked up, eager to watch the drama unfold. I was happy to grant Miss Sterling this small favor. I tilted my head and said, "As you know, Miss Sterling, Assistant Finch spent quite a bit of my wife's money. What belonged to Henry and me was not up for grabs." Leo put on a pitiful expression and purred. Diana, his tone was dripping with coquettishness. Miss Sterling, utterly charmed, gestured for her secretary to produce a bank card. The amount on this card should be enough to cover Leo's previous expenses. She even gave me a flirtatious wink. "If you ever need anything in the future, Mr. Blackwood, don't hesitate to ask." I couldn't be bothered to reply. We would have no further dealings. Taking the card, I said blandly, "Congratulations, Miss Sterling. I'm glad you got what you wanted." 11. Walking out of the company building, I looked back. The skyscraper pierced the clouds, a constant flow of people moving in and out. For a moment, my mind drifted back to our university days. A young Victoria Ashworth had once sincerely promised a shy, sincere Blackwood that they would be together forever. Now, everything had changed. Seeing my secretary trailing me cautiously, I couldn't help but smile. "Once this is all wrapped up, I'll give you a few days off." He looked at me in surprise, then asked timidly, "What about the year-end bonus? Was I really that intimidating as a boss?" I lightly tapped his head with my briefcase. Ask again and the double bonus is canceled. He immediately backed down. The next time I heard news of Leo, it was from a friend in the industry. Miss Sterling might be fabulously wealthy, but she never kept useless people around. She had only stepped in for Leo because she lusted after him. He had been untouchable while Victoria was alive, but once she had her fill, she grew bored. Once you get used to luxury, it's hard to go back. Leo made a name for himself by bouncing between various wealthy patrons. He eventually died during a tryst. On that very same day, Victoria's spirit vanished for good. Ever since she witnessed Leo's true colors, Victoria had fallen into a deep silence. I often forgot she was even there, a shadow at my side. But I didn't care. I lived my life freely and happily. After all, being happy is what matters most in life. 12. More than a decade passed. Henry, who had grown into an incredibly handsome young man, went viral across the internet because of a candid photo of him drinking bubble tea on the street. Driven by a genuine interest in acting, Henry, after much consideration, decided to enter the entertainment industry. He was stubborn about it. I offered to use my connections to get him better scripts, but he refused, insisting on starting from the bottom and working his way up. Whether it was a walk-on role with a single shot or the leading male part, Henry would immerse himself in the character, meticulously polishing every detail. He was dedicated, and he was happy. The only downside was that Henry came home less often. It was the end of another summer. Henry returned from a film set and came to me, asking if I would be willing to join him on a reality show. It's a slow-paced, family-themed reality show focused on just spending time together. I haven't traveled with you in so long, Dad, so I thought I'd take you with me. To the world, he was the top-tier star Henry Blackwood, beloved by millions of young women. To me, he was still the same boy, well-behaved and sensible, but still knew how to wheedle what he wanted. Seeing my hesitation, Henry tugged on my sleeve, whining playfully, "Dad, fine." A few days later, the production crew's equipment and staff began arriving at my apartment. "Mr. Blackwood, this is for the pilot episode," the deputy director said, pushing up his glasses, his tone tentative. Henry had already told me about it, so I sat with him in front of the camera. The staff asked a lot of questions about his childhood, and I answered them all. Henry chimed in with jokes from time to liven the mood, and the entire shoot went smoothly. The first stop for the show was a resort destination. Since it was a lifestyle documentary-style program, there weren't many cameramen following us, and we had a wonderful time. As the show neared its end, we arrived at the final stop. For the last leg of our journey, we came to a major film studio complex where the weather was pleasant. The director had Henry filming other content, so I went to a movie set by myself. The set was a cacophony of bright lights and bustling people. I was carrying a few boxed meals and a number of extras gathered around. After chatting for a bit, Henry returned, and we went to a nearby night market together. Neon lights flickered, and the air was filled with the clamor of the crowd. Perhaps it was the beer, but Henry's cheeks were flushed, and his eyes were shining. "Dad, I've always wanted to show you what my work is like." As he spoke, his voice grew a little thick with emotion. I smiled and ruffled his hair, just as I did when I used to lull him to sleep as a child and comforted him softly. "Henry, you're already so outstanding." Henry had always been a sensible child, knowing his limits. He would always ask for my advice when he was unsure about something, never acting rashly. Entering the entertainment industry was his own carefully considered choice, and clearly he had succeeded. He had become a truly talented actor, admired by the masses. Having such a wonderful son made me proud and very, very happy. After the show ended, Henry continued his acting career, but he no longer worked himself to the bone. After each project wrapped, he would take a 2-month break to come back and spend time with his aging father. As for me, I had long since handed over the management of my companies to professional managers. My days were spent either shopping, playing golf with a few friends, or going on vacation. Life without a woman was still wonderfully satisfying. 13. Victoria's perspective. After leaving Sincere's side, I did not, as I had expected, fall into an endless abyss. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in high school, back to the day I first met Sincere Blackwood. Not far from me, Sincere was dressed in a sharp-looking school uniform and black-framed glasses, laughing and talking with his friends. In my past life, I'd used the excuse of giving him a script to get to know him. He was a good man. My hand, clutching the script, tightened. I didn't dare approach him again. For those 2 years of high school, I watched Sincere from afar. Without me, Sincere didn't lose his shine. In fact, freed from having to cater to my pathetic pride, he shone even brighter. He was accepted into a prestigious arts academy through early admission before the final exams. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. So, all this time, he had sacrificed so much for me without my even knowing. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up to him. I only managed to get into an ordinary university near his academy. Gradually, the gap between us grew wider and wider. As a new student, he naturally became the brightest star on campus. I knew of at least a dozen girls pursuing him. Each of them was a campus beauty, far beyond what I had been back then. And I was like a wretch stuck in the mud, unable to climb out. I met Leo Finch again in my 6th year of working. Failing too many classes in university led to a delayed graduation. I missed the prime hiring season, and after much struggle, my limited abilities landed me a job as a rideshare driver. I accepted a ride request to a high-end hotel. My battered old second-hand car looked completely out of place in front of the luxurious hotel. When I called the number, a familiar voice answered. "Okay, I'll be right down." It was Leo. After a short wait, Leo, dressed in an expensive custom-made suit, slid elegantly into the back seat. Wait. Leo's family was of modest means. There was no way he could afford a hotel like this. I took a deep breath, an image of the past life, Leo clinging to Diana Sterling, flashing in my mind. This was his true self. He had been faking it all along. I was so stupid. "Just drive the car, what are you looking at?" Leo's polite phone voice vanished as he irritably adjusted his collar. I realized I had been staring at him in the rearview mirror. Leo snorted and pulled out his phone. You can count on a bad rating. I no longer had the energy to care. My mind was flooded with memories of my time with Sincere. I once had the very best. How could I have been deceived by a man like this? I leaned back wearily in the driver's seat. My phone soon chimed with a notification. I looked down. Sure enough, a 1-star rating from Leo. I gave a bitter smile and opened Sincere's social media profile. No longer having to compromise for my sake, Sincere had taken the path that was truly meant for him. In his latest video, Sincere was standing on an award stage, elegant, poised, and full of confidence. The end finished.